Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have an extraordinary guest whose journey from hardship to success is both inspiring and transformative. Joining us is Dave Albin, an Army veteran and the world's #1 Firewalk instructor. Dave served in the U.S. Army from 1974 to 1976, and his military experience laid the foundation for his later endeavors. After facing personal struggles with drug and alcohol addiction, Dave turned his life around and has been 36 years sober today, June 8th, to 2024. His resilience and determination led him to the personal development industry, where he attended his first Tony Robbins seminar in 1995 and discovered his passion for firewalking. Dave worked as Tony Robbins' Firewalk Captain for nearly 2 decades, helping thousands of individuals confront their fears and transform their lives by walking across hot burning coals. In 2014, he founded Firewalk Productions, a company dedicated to providing life-changing team-building experiences. His impressive client list includes significant organizations like Google, NASA, Notre Dame, go Irish, Virginia Tech, and many more. Dave's journey from addiction to despair to becoming a global speaker and team-building expert is a testament to his strength and perseverance. He's spoken on over 150 podcasts, sharing his story of overcoming adversity and teaching others how to harness their inner power. Join us as we delve into Dave's remarkable story, exploring his military service, personal challenges, and mission to inspire others through the transformative power of firewalking. So let's dive in and warmly welcome Dave Albin, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Dave, brother, thank you so much for being here. I'm super grateful you blocked some time to come have a conversation with me today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Adam. I mean, you guys as a host, you do all the work. But the fact that I'm 36 years sober today and on your show means the world to me. So thanks for having us, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, brother, I'm honored to be able to host you on your sobriety date, and I think that by itself is a powerful message to our community and everything that they go through. So let's dive right in, Dave. You what inspired you to join the Army? Kind of where did you grow up, and what was life for you like growing up?
Well, if we go deep, a couple of months before I was born, Adam, my biological father, we don't really know what happened. We know that he hurt his head. We know that in 1953, they put a plate in his head to save his life, but it also took his life. 2 months before I'm born, he turned to mom, and he had complained about pain all the time. And so he turned to mom and said, "I'm going to the grocery store." And we never saw or heard from him again. And so when I was born to a single mom. And she already had 2 boys. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and my grandmother, her mother, and another cousin were all living in this 1-bedroom apartment. And so when I was 5 years old, mom couldn't feed us. And so she went to her oldest sister, Pat, and she said, "Would you adopt David?" And Bob and Pat Albin agreed to do that. Now, mom, she knew hard work. She was working up the street at the Roosevelt Hotel doing double shifts. She came from that era. The greatest group of people that's ever walked this planet, that whole generation, right? That's the ones that went through the Great Depression. They went through World War II. They did, it's funny, they talk about what women can do and what they can't do. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Give me a break. Talk to my mom. They did everything. While the men were off fighting the war in Europe and in the Pacific, both going on at the same time, what do you think women were doing? Everything.
They were working in the factories making the shit that we needed to carry on the war. My grandmother, the most important woman ever in my life, was born in 1919. My grandfather served in World War II, and all the stories growing up I heard from her. She worked in a shoe factory. She worked in an airplane factory. She worked in an ammo factory. She did it all and held it all together, and she did it all without a driver's license.
Right. My mom, my biological mom, did the exact same thing. She worked building airplanes. So your grandma was known at one time as Rosie the Riveter. Right. There's a picture that they made during World War II with, they had like this arm and they had the planes in the background and they had a bandana and the women were out there just kicking ass. And without them, we wouldn't have won the war. No doubt. So again, I'm raised by, the greatest generation that's ever walked the planet. So again, when I got adopted at 5 by Pat Albin, again, they were technically my aunt and uncle, and it was my mom's oldest sister. So we moved from Hollywood to Long Beach. My dad's career military officer. We had a nice house. We had nice things. They budgeted well. They were smart with their money, at least from the standpoint of coming out of the industrial age. And it was wonderful. And then everything changed on the first day of summer, 1964. I got up the first day of summer. You're a kid. What are you thinking on the first day of summer? Right? It's Alice Cooper, school's out for summer, right? And so I'm all excited. Well, I'm in the TV room. And mom comes in and she goes, David, come to the kitchen. We need to speak with you. Now, what I think is going to happen is they're going to tell us where we're going camping, because we went camping a lot. We've been to Yosemite. We've been to Lake Arrowhead, Big Bear Lake, Lake Havasu. We had gone all over the Southern and Northern California areas. And so I sit down and my mom puts her hand on my arm. I'm sitting in between Bob and Pat Albin, my mom and dad, if you will. And the next thing I know, my mom, with tears in her eyes, she goes, David, we need to tell you something. And what we need to tell you is we're not your parents. What? What does that mean? What are you talking about? Of course, you're my parents. So I have no idea what they're trying to tell me. In fact, they went on to tell me, she said, your Aunt Dean? Yeah. Well, she's actually your biological mother. And I'm like, I don't even like her. Now, here's what I mean by that. Anytime she was around me or had an opportunity to be around me, she was around me. She wanted to sit next to me. She wanted to hug me. She wanted to hold me. She wanted to kiss me. You know what I mean? It was never inappropriate, but I was her son. No kidding. She wanted to be around me and coddle me, if you will. But I had no clue what was going on. I just thought it was my affectionate aunt. That's all. And so that was a big day in my life. And shortly after they told me this, Adam, they both started drinking. And then it got ugly and it changed very quickly. Pat was kind of a happy drunk. She would drink at the kitchen table and pass out. Where Bob, he was vicious. He had PTSD. He had been in, he'd fought in the war. So he had a lot going on in his life and was affected psychologically. But man, when you poured alcohol in him, he was not a nice guy. And so one day they went to the grocery store and, back in those days, you could leave your kids at home. You did it all the time. And so I kind of waited for that moment. And because I wanted to know what this stuff they were drinking. What is this stuff? Why, when they drink this stuff, they start acting out like that? And so they were hiding it in plain sight. So I went and got a coffee cup. They drove down the driveway. I filled it about half full with brandy.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
How was that experience?
Oh yeah, just lovely stuff, right? But I drank the whole thing.
Not good.
And you know what? I never had a chance. I was an alcoholic on the spot because from the moment.
How old were you?
I was 11.
Oof.
right? I never had a chance because it just took over. It was like pouring rocket fuel into my body. And so I started acting out alcoholically almost immediately. And by the time I was 11, by the time I was a junior in high school, I was violent. And they called me into the principal's office one day and said, "Albin, you're out. We're expelling you." I'm like, "Okay, good. I don't want to be in your damn school anyway." And I didn't, because there was a song by Paul Simon.
So you've known for a long time you wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah. Because, when I was young, it started off, I lived across the street from a golf course. And here's what I learned about golfers. They suck. And they would hit balls over the fence. They were everywhere.
Did you sell them back to him?
Oh, I'd ride my bike around the perimeter, find the balls, take them home, clean them, go back to the pro shop, and the trash cans, they threw the boxes away that new balls came in. So I clean them up, put them in there, go back to the parking lot, the golf course. You're right. I'd sell them back to the golfer.
Yeah, 100% entrepreneur right there. That's awesome.
I had a paper route. That's a 7-day-a-week job. You got to go there after school, pick up your papers, go throw the papers, deliver them to all your customers. Every morning, Saturdays and Sundays, you had to be up at 5 o'clock, go do your paper route. Yeah, so you're an entrepreneur because you have to do it all. You have to collect the money. You have to knock on doors to get new clients. You had to do all of it. Mom grew beautiful flowers in the backyard. She had a green thumb. She came from the Great Depression. She could grow anything. And so she had a beautiful eye for color as well. So she would trim those and cut those flowers. And when she cut them at an angle, not at the bottom, at an angle. And the reason she did that, I found out later, was more water could get up into the flower. The other thing she did when she arranged them, put them in a bucket to send me out on the street corner to sell them, she put a little bit of 7-Up in that water.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, oh yeah, because my flowers outlasted the local florist 2-1.
Nice.
So repeat customers, yeah. So I'm selling. And it's funny because when men would pull up to buy flowers, they always went in to negotiate. Women never did. Look at the cute little boy selling flowers, right? Women would never do it, but guys were, they're pretty brutal. And I never negotiated with them. No.
The price is the price.
They'd say, "Hey, I'll buy, right? I'll buy 3 for this." And I'd say, "No." And they'd say, "Why?" I go, "Because the next guy that pulls up will pay me what I'm asking. Why would I do that? I sell out every weekend." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you're a pretty smart kid." And then, they pay me the full amount. Sometimes they'd even pay me a little more. It was hilarious. So I learned entrepreneurship at a very, very young age. And so that's progressed from there. Getting kicked out of high school, I went and got a really good job. I moved out of my house into an apartment in Belmont Shore, California, a really cool place. I went out and bought a brand new Mach 1 Mustang, 351 Cleveland, a muscle car, if you will.
What year was it?
It was 71.
Oh man, that was a pretty sweet car.
It was yellow with black interior. It was a gorgeous hot rod.
I'm all about the classic American muscle. Yeah. I mean, my dad is responsible for that. And to this day, the older 50s and 60s trucks are my thing.
Yeah, I love them. They're all beautiful, right? If I had the money, I'd have a garage with 100 of them in there, right? So I got married early on to my childhood sweetheart, high school sweetheart. That didn't work out. We were totally the opposite. We only lasted a couple of months. And then I met a woman that was in California from Virginia. She had moved to California to, find her pot of gold, if you will. And instead she found me. The good news is she took me back to Virginia. So that's when I left California. And thank goodness she did, because I had some drug dealers that, let's just say, they weren't real happy with me. And so she saved my life and got me to Virginia. And then one day she looked at me and she said, "David, I can't do this. I love you, but man, your alcohol and drug addiction is more than I can take." And so we separated and divorced. And then I met a bartender. Imagine that.
Well, that's what you needed in your life.
Okay, if you're going to be an alcoholic, it might be a good idea to find a bartender. She had 3 kids, so I married her with the idea that maybe I would slow down because I wanted to be a good stepdad. And I was for a while. And then, on June 8th, 1988, I woke up that morning. I'm living in the basement and the rest of the family's upstairs. And I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. We're done here. I ain't doing this anymore. I'm in so much physical pain and emotional pain that it's going to stop. It's going to end. So my first thought was, in that moment, was put a bullet in your head. It'll be real easy. It'll be painless. You're not going to feel anything. The pain all goes away. Easy answer, right? Well, no, not exactly. Not if you stop and think about your family and what you're going to do to them, and you're going to devastate them. Because who do you think is going to clean it up? Who do you think is going to come downstairs and see it? Your stepkids. And I remember thinking, you can't do that, man. That's wrong. That's ugly. You'll ruin their life. So I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do? I know. Let's call Alcoholics Anonymous. And the interesting thing about that moment was I didn't even know who AA was. I had no references. I didn't know anybody in AA, but there was the thought. So I called him. And I got a beautiful human being on the other end of the phone. And I've affectionately nicknamed her Madge over the years. And the reason I did that is because she talked like this.
From The Simpsons.
She smoked 2 packs of Pall Mall non-filters a day. So what do you think her voice was going to be like?
Yeah.
Right? And she was a badass, man. She was like answering the phones for AA, right? So her job, she's a gatekeeper. Her job's to interview you. And if it warrants and she thinks she'll show up, she'll send somebody to come get you and take you to an AA meeting. That's exactly what she did. She called the Stepping Stones group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Fairfax, Virginia at that time, which is now in Herndon. And a gentleman by the name of Lauren came and picked me up.
And that changed your life.
Changed my life. I went to 4 meetings that day, 12:30, 4:30, 6:30, and an 8:30. And I got to tell you, man, I've only felt home in 2 places in my life: AA and a grungy, shitty little bar somewhere where I could hide in the back. So these men, it was an all men's group. They embraced me. They took me and said they knew. I told them that I was going to commit suicide that morning, so they knew I was a sick kid. And man, they embraced me. Before I left that first day, they gave me a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they opened the front page and they signed it. They put their first name and their phone number, and at the top they said, "Before you take that first drink, call one of us." So there I was. I had a book and resources right there on day one. It's funny because the next morning at 8:00 in the morning, day 2 of AA, my phone rang at 8 in the morning, and I hello, and it's John from AA. He's like, "Hey, Dave, good morning. How you feeling this morning?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? How do you think I feel? I want to kill somebody. And I might start with you for calling me at 8:00 in the morning. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And he's really cool. He's like, yeah, I hear you. He said, "Hey, man, I know where you live. Last night, during the meeting, you said where you live. I live right around the corner from you. Let me do this. Let me come pick you up. Let me take you to breakfast, and then I'll take you to an AA meeting." I'm threatening this guy. and he's laughing it off and saying, "I'll come pick you up."
Well, and I think that speaks to the importance of having someone who genuinely cares to support you, no matter. He's walked a mile in your shoes, right? So he understands where you're actually at, right? Probably going through withdrawals, completely miserable. I'm also an alcoholic. I had 7 and 7 was my thing, right? Up to 2 gallons a week at its height, and not including what I was drinking at the bar and just the self-destructive behavior. And I didn't have anybody to support me. However, I also didn't seek treatment from AA. I was, that asshole who was like, "Well, I'm going to do this on my own." So I did. And not everybody can do that, right? But I want to back up for a minute, Dave, because you served during a time where I think a lot was probably, Vietnam, right? So did you actually go to Vietnam?
Because I had quit high school, I was A1. So, and they shut down the draft 2 weeks before I was going to get drafted.
Okay, so you didn't get drafted. So did you join
No, I
voluntarily?
joined.
Okay.
And I joined going in, and I joined on a delay entry program. So my dad's military, right? So he goes, let me tell you how we're going to do this. Because he did not want me to go to Vietnam because he knew what was going on. And he knew there was a huge lie going on. They were covering it up. Our boys were dying left and right. And he knew it was horrible. And so he said, look, you join, and then you don't have to go in for a year. Well, the timing was perfect. So no, I didn't have to go to Vietnam, thank goodness.
Yeah, because your generation is one that I personally look up to a ton. Just knowing what I know about war and my experiences and what was faced in Vietnam in the jungles and whatnot, and so much so I actually bought a Vietnam veteran breakfast yesterday
Nice.
morning. He was sitting alone by himself at the IHOP. Kind of looked pretty sad, like maybe he had lost his wife recently or something like that. And so, how
the day before was June 6th.
Yeah, that also has a big impact. And so I was just curious, did your time in the Army and kind of the societal air that was going on, veterans were coming home from Vietnam being called baby killers and being spit on by their own population, right? And that is not what I experienced coming home from Iraq 3 times and Afghanistan once. It was very, very much the opposite. People lined up in the airports to clap for you and shake your hand and thank you. And I was curious if any of that kind of influenced and exacerbated your addiction problems.
No, because I was 11 when I took my first drink. So
yeah, so you were just kind of screwed from the beginning, right?
yeah, right. I by the time I got to that age, I was grossly addicted to, drugs and alcohol. Though when I got to basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, you go 6 weeks, obviously, with very little drinking other than I think we took one trip into not Charleston, but Columbia, and, partied a little bit. I was able to refrain from, the drugs and alcohol while I was in basic. It was interesting. I had of course, when I got there, Dad said, don't volunteer for anything, period. Keep your mouth shut, your head down, and don't volunteer for a damn thing. Okay, Dad, gotcha. Don't volunteer, keep my head down, keep my mouth shut. Gotcha. So we're in formation one morning, right? And the drill sergeant says, can any of you maggots type? Well, none of them could, except me, right? I took typing in 9th grade. Now, why do you think I took typing, Adam? Because it was full of girls.
Is that really the reason?
Yeah, absolutely. Why else would I want to take typing in 9th grade? Who cares? There's two guys in the class, me and a guy by the name of Ed Smith. I'm Albin. I sat up front, he sat in the back, and everything in between were all the girls.
You're in heaven.
I was in heaven. So, but I learned how to type because I kind of liked it. It was kind of cool, right? So I think I got to, I think my height at one time was 46 words a minute, which is pretty damn good.
Well, and we're not talking about computers. We're talking about typewriters back then, right?
No, this is a typewriter.
Yeah, it's a little bit different typing on it. My wife she's super nostalgic like that. She always says she should have been born in the 50s. And so one year for her birthday, I went to an antique shop and I got her like a 1940s really cool typewriter. The thing weighs a ton, but I try typing on it. I get so frustrated because it is not at all like using a keyboard now.
And if you make a mistake, you had a little whiteout thing that you would use and you could type in red.
Yeah, there's no delete button.
There's a ribbon, right, that you would use, and then if you made a mistake, you had to insert this thing and back it up and hit the R, to go over the top of it. Oh yeah, it was hilarious. So anyway, I got ringing in my head. Dad goes, "Don't volunteer, don't volunteer, don't volunteer." And I'm going, but I'm also thinking Radar O'Reilly and MASH, right? I'm thinking, wait a minute here, this could be a good thing. So I went, I can type, drill sergeant. Get out here, maggot. What are you talking about, Albin? Where did you learn to type? I took it in 9th grade, drill sergeant. He goes, you pretty good? Yeah. I go, I can type like 40 some words a minute. He goes, go report to Commander Coke. So the company commander. So I went and saw the first sergeant and, he interviewed me and he had me type, and he goes, "Damn, you're pretty good, young man." You know, the first sergeants, they're always pretty nice guys, right? And so the next thing I know, I'm Radar O'Reilly. He said, so Captain Coke interviewed me. He said, "You're done. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go back to your barracks, pull all your shit, and go put it in the area off to the side. You're not going to be in the barracks with the rest of the guys. We're going to have to separate you. And then you're going to report to me every morning." And so I started driving the Jeep. I was his secretary. I was the commander's secretary. So I'm going through basic training, and, I'm like, this ain't so bad. No, I had to go qualify for everything, right? When they would go throw grenades or qualify with the M16s or the M60s or whatever we were doing, I had to go do all that, PT, stuff like that. But it was pretty phenomenal. That's for sure.
That's awesome, brother.
So, yeah. So anyway, and then when I was I was literally going to follow my dad's footsteps in the National Guard, and like 2 days before I got I graduated from basic, Nixon put a freeze on federal hiring. So my job that was waiting for me over here in the National Guard went away. And so it was like, oh, crap. So anyway, long story short, I went to Dad and said, "Dad, I don't want to be a weekend warrior. This is a waste of my time." And he goes, "Well, since your job is not there waiting for you, you can probably get out. They'll probably discharge you with an honorable discharge simply because they can't fulfill the contract."
So that's exactly what happened.
And Dad was right. So I went ahead and X'd out, and again, got my honorable discharge, and away I went.
So I'm curious, a big part of what we talk about on here, particularly, for my generation of veterans, is the loss of purpose during transition. And so for you didn't spend a whole lot of time in the service, right? But did you have those issues also? We talked before we started recording, and you said you very much agree with my message and the purpose, the path back to purpose being through entrepreneurship. So I assume that you did have some struggles finding purpose after the military. Can you talk about that?
To be very candid, I don't know. Again, because I had such an entrepreneurial spirit, I knew that I would figure out a way. When I had all those jobs I was talking about earlier when I was a kid, and and working as an entrepreneur, here's one of the things I learned early on. There's money out there. Go get it.
Yeah.
And there's good things come for those who hustle.
Yeah.
And so that was my mantra. And so once I got, I say all the time, I'm not employable. I could never work for somebody else. Not after being an entrepreneur my whole life.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so, yeah, it's just me. It's how I'm wired. And so again, I've always figured out a way, and I've done that to this day. I started several businesses. Most of them were all very successful. And, again, with that entrepreneurial spirit, you got to learn it all, right? You have to learn sales. You have to learn marketing, accounting, advertising, fulfillment, all of it.
Networking.
Yeah, all of it. So you figure it out. Now you got social media and all that. So the bottom line was, I just loved the space. I loved being able to get to a place where I could go where I want, when I want, with who I want, as often as I want. To me, that's total fulfillment and achievement at the same time.
And real freedom.
Real freedom.
So let's fast forward. So you get sober on June 8th, 1988. And in about, what are you doing for the 7 years before you go to Tony Robbins' first seminar?
Well, what happened is that sobriety and the personal development industry collided in my life at the same time. So what happened was I was up late one night watching an infomercial because I had insomnia, so I couldn't sleep. Well, there he was, the man himself. Back in the late 80s, Tony Robbins was, the infomercial king. And so I was watching one of his infomercials. So when I first saw him, I didn't like him. I thought he was a pompous ass. He's all motivated and encouraging. Well, I'm not. I'm miserable. I'm in my first day, first couple days of AA. And so, but he said a couple things, Adam, that got me. One of the things he said was, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I went, whoa, you're talking to me. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Because that's exactly why I was using drugs and alcohol. I was either chasing some pleasure or I was trying to run from pain. And then what he said, the next thing he said really got me. He said, the driving force in our life, how we make decisions is we do them out of inspiration or desperation. And I went, holy moly, he's talking to me. And so it resonated with me. And the program he was selling was called Personal Power. And it was, he sent it to you. You did it at home. It came on these little white things called cassette tapes. And so I did. I got them. They sent it to me. I plugged them in. I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. And then I loaned my program to a buddy in AA. Well, 7 years later, in 1995, my buddy calls me on the phone. And he called me and he said, hey, did you know that Tony Robbins is coming to town? And I'm like, no, man, I had no idea. And he goes, dude, come on. We got to go. You got me into this, man. You got to go with me. And I said, well, what's the date? And I go, yeah, I can go. I'll go with you. And he goes, great. Let me call you back. Well, he calls me back like an hour later, right? And he said, so here's what they told us to do. Number one, drink a lot of water. You've got to hydrate during this 4-day event. Number two, bring snacks. You are going to spend a lot of time in the room. I'm laughing because anybody that's been to a Tony Robbins seminar knows what a joke that is. And then he said, be ready to play full out and bring a good attitude. Okay. So how much was the ticket, Dan? $695. What?
What? In 1995, that's a lot of money.
What does that equate to today? Like 1.2 million? Right? I don't know. Buy Bitcoin. So anyway, I said, no problem. I'll pay it. He goes, yeah, you can pay me back anytime. Don't worry about it. And then as he's getting ready to get off the phone, he goes, oh, wait. Hey, man. He says, we're going to, before he got off the phone, he's saying, hey, man, I almost forgot to tell you, we're going to be doing a firewalk. And my brain went, oh, hell no. Right? I'm like, and you know what's interesting, Adam? I don't know what a firewalk means. What does that mean? I've never heard about it before. Nothing, no references, nothing. However, the word fire and walk in the same sentence didn't sound like anything I wanted to be doing. Right. And my buddy, I'm not going to let him know I'm a coward. So I'm just going to I'm being subservient, right? I'm going, yeah, sure, Dan. Yeah, no problem. Firewalk sounds interesting. All right, bro. See you then. Well, the big day comes. Tony took the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. And then next thing I know, Tony says, take your shoes off. And I'm like, oh, no. No.
You're putting two and two together.
I see where you're going with that, pal. You're not going to fool me. I'm not taking my shoes off. Well, I got a big problem. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. Guess what they're doing? They sure are. And my buddy is. So now what am I going to do? Well, you're going to follow suit or everybody's going to point at you. Hey, look at the coward. Didn't take his shoes off. Well, hell, we can't have that. Right? So I'm like, okay. So just what's your plan, Dave? You're not going to firewalk. So what are you going to do? So I'm like, all right, just take your shoes off. And then when you go out there, there's 3,500 people. You're going to go out in this big, giant parking lot, ditch your buddy. Nobody's going to know. Go hide in the back. And so I think that's a pretty good strategy. Sounds good anyway. And sure enough, but there's a twist. As soon as he gets everybody going out there, Tony, that, got 3,500 people going out in this big parking lot, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting. So now you got 3,500 people going, yes, yes, yes. And it's intense. And when you get outside, it gets worse because he's got African drummers. So now you got that vibration, that, that energy is dun, 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 dun. And African drummers are just incredible, right? So now you got all that going on. It's intense. That's all I can tell you. There's nothing like it on earth that I've ever been around other than a Tony Robbins seminar. And so as we're going out there, I moved to the side and I ditched my buddy because we're all kind of walking out there. Nobody's looking behind us. And Dan's in front of me, and I positioned myself. So when I stepped to the side, I lost him. And then I went and hit at the back, which I think is a pretty good strategy, right? Well, Tony Robbins knows that the Firewalk is one of the most extraordinary experiences on earth. That's why he brought it into his event. Firewalking has been around for 1,000 years and been used by cultures all over the place. So he knew it was an intense experience. And he also knows that if you don't do it, you're going to miss the paradigm shift. He also knows there's people like me. He knows where we are. So what's he do? He trains people to come find you. Son of a bitch. Really? I'm back there thinking that I got it all figured out, and here comes this dude out of nowhere. And he makes eye contact with me, and I know Robbins must train him. Once you make eye contact, don't take your eyes off him. And so now he's coming right at me, and I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. He gets maybe 12, 15 feet in front of me, and he's turning his head from side to side like a dog that hears a funny noise. And he's looking at me, and he kind of points at me. He goes, "Hey, man, are you okay?" And when we're not okay, what do we say? "I'm fine. No problem here. Move along. Nothing to see." And this guy goes right for the kill shot. He goes, "Oh, good." He said, "Hey, man, you going to walk tonight?" And now I'm kind of ticked off. I'm like, absolutely not. I mean, it's almost like, why do you think I'm hiding in the back, you idiot? And the guy goes, he's really cool, right? He was trained. And he goes, "Hey, man, that's cool. No problem. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do." And I went, oh, okay, this guy's going to get me out of here. No, he's not. He's setting me up. Because the next question he asked me was, "Well, hey, wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I went, "Yeah, sure, why not? Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. It should be very interesting." Well, he said, "Well, listen, man, you can't see anything from back here. I'm 100 plus yards away. I can't see anything. I can hear it. I can see a big fire over here that's been this giant fire. They build a pit, it's probably 35 feet wide, 70 feet long, and they do nothing but feed that thing with hardwood, seasoned hardwood, all day for 10 hours. And so at the end of the night, it renders. You got a big, giant pile of coals. Well, logistically, Adam, how you firewalk 3,500 people or 12,000 people, you build a big fire. And then you load the coals in a wheelbarrow, in steel wheelbarrows. Then you just position a wheelbarrow in between two fire lanes, which are made out of grass. And so they're like 3 feet wide and 15 feet long. And then they just take a flathead shovel from that wheelbarrow and those coals, and they sprinkle them on top. And then they pat them down, and that's what you walk on. Well, again, I'm way in the back, right? Now, but I can hear it. They're still chanting, they're clapping, the drums are going. People are already firewalking, and they're celebrating like kids at Christmas. I mean, literally, once they get to the celebration end, they are screaming and yelling and jumping up and down with exhilaration. And again, so I got in line. I said, okay, yeah, I'll go watch. I took the bait. Okay. And so the next thing I know, another stranger comes up to me. And he kind of whispers in my ear, kind of loudly, actually. He goes, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew! This guy just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean he knows when you're ready? And when he says go, you go. What does that mean? And so now, as I'm moving along, I get to a point where I can't see in front of me because I got 1,000 people still, right? But I can see at an angle, and they're doing it. These people are firewalking. Every race, every creed, every color. My brain is going, what in the hell is wrong with these people? We're mammals. We're taught to run from fire, not walk on it. And so as I'm mesmerized staring at these people, and I can't, it's kind of like a car accident, right? You say you're not going to look at it, but you can't take your eyes off it. And so that's what's happening. Well, as I'm watching that, I'm not paying attention to what's going on in front of me. And the next thing I know, boom, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line. And I'm like, how in the hell did I get here? And so now I look down at that fire lane, right? And those coals, they're bright red. They are bright red. There's a wheelbarrow there. You can feel the heat coming off. It's intense. And my heart is beating so hard. I know it's going to jump out of my chest any minute. And so thank goodness there's a trainer there, because I'm staring into the abyss. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up, like, you idiot. Well, I'm in a room with Tony for 10 hours. Guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear. It'll crush you. It'll immobilize you. And so look to the celebration end. That's where the reward is. Focus on the prize. So now my eyes are up, and he said, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell. He's a trainer. I was leaving a lot on the table, and he knew that. I was not in a peak state. Close, but not in a full peak state. So what's he do? He gets in my face, and he screams at me again. Stronger! And so now I'm pissed, right? So I'm like, I threw my hands in the air, and I went, yes! And he goes, go, go, go. Boom. I took off. Well, remember the other stranger that came up? He said, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. Well, and here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take that first step, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I promise you, right? So they position two guys at the end, and they lock arms, and they catch you. Because hell, I'd have walked all the way to Albuquerque at that point. And so they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. So I'm wiping my feet, and I'm celebrating with all the other celebrants, 2,500 people, 3,500 people. And it's exhilarating. It's like it was one of the most incredible moments of my entire life. And in that moment, you think you can do anything. Because I'm like looking around. I look back, and I went, I just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees, and I didn't burn myself.
Right.
I thought I burnt myself originally, but I didn't. I looked at my feet. No, your feet are dirty, but there's no burns. And so at that point, I'm analyzing. If I can walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees, what else can I do? And so at that moment, I'm like, I know. Hey, everybody, let's get on the bus. Let's go climb Everest. I mean, that's what you feel like. You feel like you're invincible. You feel like you can do anything. And that's right where Tony wants you on day one of a 4-day event. But here's where it gets really interesting, Adam. The next day. Because we come into the foyer, and now we're waiting to go into the venue. And I'm with 3,500 people, and I've never seen or witnessed anything like this in my life. Last night, I didn't know any of these people, nor did I care. But that next morning, I felt like I knew all these people, like they were some of my best friends. And I'm watching them really closely, and they're interacting unlike anything I'd ever seen. They're laughing, they're crying, they're hugging, they're talking about the firewalk, they're talking about their fears. It was so beautiful to be in that moment with all those people. Such an energy, our just who everything, our essence of who we were. Our vibrations were so high. And so later in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers, a guy by the name of Ted Macy. Super beautiful dude, man. Great guy. And his wife, Mary, were both trainers for Tony back in the day. And so I'm just talking to Ted, and I ask him, I said, so Ted, what's it like being in this environment? You're in it on a regular basis, aren't you? And he goes, yeah, sure am. And he says, and I'll tell you what, whatever you need to do to get in here, you ought to consider doing it. As a matter of fact, he said, you see those people standing over there with the black shirts with the pink writing on the back? Yeah, why? He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're people just like you. They came to an event, and then they filled out an application, and they got chosen to come back and be part of it. So when you go home, call Robbins Research, ask them for a crew application. They'll send it to you, fill it out, send it back, and who knows? Maybe I'll see you here at the next event. Well, I did that. And 9 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail and it said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies. Well, color my ass happy. So there I was in the environment. And so I crewed, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. The challenge is that I was spending $1,500 to $2,000 every time I went because you got to pay your way. Well, my wife wasn't real happy with that. I'm spending all this money and she doesn't know who Tony Robbins is. She's got no references really for that. And yet I'm jumping $2,000 every time I go. So there was some friction there. Well, shortly after I got deeply involved in the crewing part of it, I got offered a job as a subcontractor. And the reason for that is when I filled out the application, first of all, they saw I had a military background and a security background. So they said, hey, we could pull him out and let him be part of the security detail to help take care of Tony's celebrities, which they did. They also saw that I lived on a farm. So they knew I knew how to use tools and a log splitter and a hatchet. And I know what kindling is. I know what the difference between oak and hickory and locust and hardwoods are. So I was a shoo-in to be on the fire team. And so they hired me as an assistant captain. And this was all going down, Adam, in 1995, 1996. Well, after they hired me as a subcontractor, they did something brilliant. They gave me a ticket for my spouse, free ticket. So I got to bring her. So she went, and on day 4, after we graduated, we were walking on the beach in Fort Lauderdale, and she goes, okay, I get it. I drank the Kool-Aid. This guy's incredible. And so if you want to go run with him and be part of his world, you go, bro, or go, husband. And so I did. And then that all went down, like I said, 95, 96. 2003 comes along, and Robbins offered me the captain's position. And that meant that I would take over all of Tony's Firewalks globally. And I had my kids, we were homeschooling at the time. And I said, hey, this is going to be problematic for me. And he said, well, what if we paid to have your kids travel with us? Would that make a difference? Well, yeah, absolutely. And so my kids got to go on the road with their dad and their mom and Tony Robbins.
That's awesome, man.
My daughter, the first time my daughter walked, she was 6 years old. Adam, my son was 9.
So let's talk about the firewalking and what do you think that unlocked for you? Is it just showing yourself that you're capable of something that you think is impossible, and that unlocks so much more for you? Like, what encouraged you to really pursue? You were very against doing the firewalk, and then you walk, and then you're in this room with 3,500 other people for day 2, and this aura, this energy has changed, right? Like, people have overcome a fear. They have shown themselves that they're capable of something. Is that just something you just felt compelled to be a part of, or like, what was that for you?
I mean, up until that point, fear had taken everything from me. It made all my decisions. So what's the acronym? It was forget everything and run. Yeah, I can use a more flavorful word, but you guys get it, right? After that firewalk, it was face everything and rise. Or like we say in AA, false images appearing real. And I realized what fear was doing to me. And, again, I didn't realize it at the time that this 1,000-year-old ritual that had been used by the Tahitians and the Polynesians and the Hawaiians and the people of India and the people of Portugal and the Spaniards and the Native American Indians, they were using it as a rite of passage. It was a very ceremonial experience. It was used for graduations. And I didn't realize that at the time. It took me years later to figure out what was the compelling reason that I wanted to be able to facilitate this. But it was life-changing that quick. You're standing there and you're looking down and your brain's going, no, run. And all of a sudden, boom, there's this moment of reckoning and bam, you walk. And it's 4 seconds that changes your life. And so that, I became really interested in it. I was fascinated with the whole process. And so once I got to the level of being an assistant captain and then the captain, it just went from there. Because I watch it. I've watched 500,000 people firewalk. My team's walked everybody from Oprah to Usher and everybody in between, everybody from Chuck Liddell to the dog whisperer, right? I mean, that's the people that come and do the firewalks. And I see it on their face. They're standing there, in that moment of reckoning, scared to death. And all of a sudden they step through their fears and they walk.
It's an amazing thing.
It is. In fact, you want to see something, you want to see one, go, I'll tell you, you'll see it happen right there in front of you. Go Google Oprah's Firewalk. She's a prime example. She was, before the Firewalk, she was shit in her drawers. She was all over the place. And then all of a sudden, Tony said a few things to her, and next thing you know, she walks. And as soon as she gets to the celebration end, she's jumping up and down like a child at Christmas. And here's the unbelievable part. Right after she walks over and the cameras go with her, and she's interviewed it's a short interview, but she makes one of the biggest business decisions of her life. She says it. She goes, "This is the next chapter, people. This is the next chapter." She said, "When I came, I had no intentions." And she said, "I stayed too long at the fair because I could have got out." and so it completely transformed. And that's what the Firewalk does. Don't expect for it not to work unless you go into it with this ego attitude.
Yeah, intentions are everything, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so I'm curious, you spent 19 years around, Tony, and doing this, achieving Firewalk Captain, walking 500,000 people, being responsible, seeing all of that. Obviously, that had a big impact on you to go out on your own and found Firewalk Productions. And so I'm curious, did Tony give you his blessing to go and create a company doing this? And what was that conversation like between you and Tony?
My phone rang one day and I said, "Hello." And it was Google. And they're like, "Are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins?" I'm like, "Yeah, what can I do for you?" And they said, "Well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you." No shit. Okay. Well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? And so the next thing I know, I'm being hired by Google. And once I went there to Mountain View and we did that, I knew it was time. I had been thinking about retiring anyway because I'd been there for so long. And I had a half a dozen people out in the parking lot with me out of, several hundred that could do my job. I trained them. They were ready to go. And so I went to my next event with Tony and I said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And he's like, "You're leaving, aren't you?" "Yeah, I'm not leaving you, man. It's time for me to go. You don't need me anymore. There's a half a dozen people outside, Tony, that can do my job. I got your back. We can talk about that. I'll make some suggestions and you'll be fine." And that all held true. And so Firewalk Productions was born in, 2014 after I did Google. In fact, this is really interesting. When I was at the event with Google and we did the event, we were at lunch, I'm sitting at a table with, some of the executives, and one of the girls leaned into me and she said, "Hey, Dave, I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's a huge marketplace for you. You create a paradigm shift unlike anything on earth." She said, "Corporate America will eat you alive. They'll be all over you because you can create a paradigm shift experience that can last forever. This doesn't go away." And I went, "Wow, okay, Google's telling me that I should probably start my own business. Maybe I should listen to them." And so that's when Firewalk Productions was born. And she was right. Because shortly after Google, in fact, I did 2 gigs for Google. I'm at NASA. And then I'm at Notre Dame, and then Virginia Tech, and Remax, and Heineken, and Microsoft, and the Chick-fil-A, and YMCA, and the Entrepreneurs Organization. And, the next thing I know, I'm with Adam on the Strategic Veteran Podcast.
Yeah, and I'm super grateful to have you here,
right?
brother.
So you don't know.
You don't, and that's a testament to it, right? So you're working for Tony Robbins, who is, he's larger than life, right? Like I remember seeing him when I was a kid in the early 90s when you're getting picked up to do this with him, and he's still prolific today. Look at any social media platform, you can find 100 reels of his motivational speaking and just clips of him, lifting people up. I didn't know until booking you to come on this show that he did the Firewalk thing. I've just never kind of been one to pursue those type of events or whatever until last year when I had an experience similar. I went and did some plant medicine and was terrified and kind of in the same frame of mind you were when you're waiting to walk through the fire, like, I don't know if this is like really for me. This is kind of out there. This is woo woo. What the fuck is all this kind of thing? But brother, it changed my life and set me on.
Ayahuasca?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep. 3-night ceremony in Peru. And it's changed my life. It's changed my life completely. It's set me on the trajectory that I am. Because of that experience, I now have the strategic veteran. I'm doing the work that I'm doing. I'm sitting in front of you talking to someone who has worked with somebody I've looked up to my whole life, essentially, and it's really cool. And so can you talk about some of the initial challenges that you faced when you did stand up Firewalk Productions, if any? Because it sounds like you really were pretty established in the industry. People were reaching out to you. You had really good word of mouth, which is not always, I mean, it's usually, that's an outlier, right? Like a lot of people don't get that kind of support in the beginning, but I assume there were still challenges, right?
Yeah, there were, and most of those challenges were going on up here.
Yeah. And those are the challenges that I myself, the imposter syndrome, the thinking you're not good enough, for me, it was very much, the trauma of my formative years growing up, and all those people who were supposed to be role models or who I had looked up to not doing the right thing by me, and really kind of, setting that narrative in my head that I'm not good enough, that I'm not capable, that I'm not smart, all that bullshit, right? All that bullshit that I told myself for 36 years or whatever,
Well, you'll love this. So I'm on my way to Google. I'm going to Mountain View, 148 executives. Here we go, right? I'm on the plane ride. And all of a sudden I'm halfway to, San Mateo. And all of a sudden that little guy jumped up on my shoulder. You know the one I'm talking about, right? He goes, "You suck. What the hell makes you think you're good enough to go speak at Google? You're going to fail. You're going to fall on your face. This is going to be so embarrassing." I mean, this is the shit that's going on in my head, which is not good, right? And then all of a sudden, my other little guy jumped up on my other shoulder. And he's like, "Dave, can I remind you of something? Let me just tell you that, in 2005, you and Tony Robbins went to London and you set a world record. You firewalked 12,300 people. So tell that little asshole voice over there to shut the hell up."
And that's exactly it, brother. That's just it. Like that narrative in your head that's been plaguing you.
What you tell yourself becomes a reality.
Absolutely.
And the bottom line is, I teach this all the time because I believe, Adam, the two most important times of anybody's life is the moment you're born and the moment you figure out why. One of my mentors said something to me that I've never forgot. He said, "Dave, as long as you live, remember this. Every human has 2 lives. And the second one starts when you realize you have only one." And so we all have a story. Who creates that story? We do. And the filtering doesn't matter how something bad that happens to you or good happens to you. We still get to create that story. We're the architect, and that's going to influence you for the rest of your life. And, Viktor Frankl, I think, left us the best example of that when he wrote his book, Man's Search for Meaning.
You're the third person in a week that's recommended that book to me. So I think the universe is definitely leaving me some clues, and I probably need to read that one.
Probably about time. Yeah, third time's a charm, bro. Yeah. Well, the book is about Auschwitz. It's about him being in Auschwitz. And so, the book is really a hard read. I'm going to warn you, but man, it's going to open your eyes to a lot. Because here's what he figured out. So, they killed his family. They took everything. They took everything from you. When you got to the concentration camp at Auschwitz, they took everything. You'd be standing around naked. They didn't feed you. They put you outside in the cold weather. I mean, you suffered immensely. And so they took everything, your dignity, all of it. But here's what Viktor figured out. There's one thing you can't take from me. I have to relinquish it. I have to let you take it. And that is his attitude. And imagine living in a place where every single moment of your life, you don't know whether you're going to the chamber. And you already hear the screams. You know it's a horrible, horrible death. And you're living with that 24/7. You have no idea. And yet, what did he do? He said, I gotta maintain a good attitude, and here's why. Goes back to purpose. We talked about it earlier, Adam, and that is someone's got to get out of here and tell this story. And that's why he lived, because he told himself that divine purpose to get out. He did.
I love that, man. How do you believe firewalking serves as a tool for personal transformation and that development? And what do you think that unlocks for people when they stand in front of those 1,000-degree coals to take that 15-foot walk?
It's very ceremonial. It's very spiritual, because you're gonna get to know you really well, because it's just you and the fire.
And that's how I felt with ayahuasca, right? It's just you and the medicine. That's it.
Right? Yeah. I've got a buddy that has done it 36 times, and so he's on me. We're supposed to go in February of next year. So, no, not yet. But I've had several friends that have done it, and they all say what you say. Whoa, hello, quite a wake up call. And so I'm looking forward to that, very much so. Again, the whole firewalk thing is that what I tell people is that, when it's your turn to walk, your shit shows up, and it all reduces.
I think there's something to that. I think, no matter what it is, facing something terrifying like that, really, it forces you can't run away anymore, right? You have to do this at this point, right? Especially like in your situation, you're in front of 3,500 other people. There's an element of, I don't want to be the one who can't do this, right? You don't want to be singled out.
That can be part of it. That could be one influence. That could be one influence, but not necessarily a one all be all, if you will.
No, of course not.
There could be other shit that goes on with that, right? But you release so much, right? If you've got all this stuff going on in your life that, because again, everything that happens in our life, we attach a meaning to it. So, you can rewrite the script, because the bottom line is, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you.
That's exactly right. That's where I was kind of trying to get to is doing hard shit really shows you what you're capable of. And I think that's kind of the message here is you're capable of so much more than you've ever given yourself credit for. You just need an event to unlock that for you.
Do the easy shit in life, and life's going to become hard. Do the hard shit in life, and life's going to become easier.
I like that a lot.
And the other part I would say is, don't negotiate with yourself. Stop. If you say you're going to get your happy ass up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to the gym, freaking do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Because if you don't, then you're allowing that voice in the back of your head, or that pattern that you're running. And that's the whole thing. Everything is patterns. And so you've got to learn to interrupt that pattern and install new patterns. Like I get asked all the time, Dave, what's your regimen? Well, first thing I do in the morning, what do you think this? What's the first thing I do when I get up in the morning? I make my bed. Fair, right?
Okay. That's fair. That's not the first thing I do anymore. I get up and relieve myself, as we all do. I put my shoes and socks on, and I'm out the door for a 4-mile walk with the dogs. That's my morning routine every morning. As soon as I get back, it's make the bed, make the coffee, and then sit down to do some work.
Well, you can add some stuff to that. You may want to drink water too. Get at least 6 to 8 ounces of water in your body before you go on that walk, because you need that. We're 70% water. So for me, but I like what you're doing. You're regimented. You've got it figured out. This is what I do. And I'm non-negotiable here. The first thing I do is, I will make my bed, and then I go expose my upper torso to the morning sunlight. I learned that from Gary Brecka. If you don't know who Gary Brecka is, Google him. He's awesome.
He's awesome. I'm on his train also. Yeah. Since my plant medicine journey, I'm down 95 pounds yesterday in 11 months. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, man. Paying attention, fasting, fasted cardio every morning. I do drink tons and tons. Water's pretty much, other than my cup of coffee, that's all I drink really, for the most part. And so, yeah. And this is everyone that I talk to on this show that has figured out that way out of the transition hole and that path back to purpose and ends up on the entrepreneurship journey seems to have some kind of holistic routine like this, right? Where you're building a routine that's structured in making your bed, doing some kind of exercise, paying attention to what you're putting into your body, mindfulness, right? Being mindful of how you talk to yourself and treat yourself. And it's a reoccurring theme with every show that we do here. And you're no different. You're saying the exact same things that everybody else is saying, and everybody's routines are going to look different, but they all have these core things in common.
Well, I know we're coming to the end of the show, and so let me do this. Let me share with something with your audience that's free, and if you employ these things into your life, it will radically change your life for the better. So, number one, expose your upper torso to the morning sunlight. There's no damaging rays, and that influxes your body with vitamin D, and it's so good for you. And while you're doing that for about 9 minutes. By the way, you won't get sunburn. It's the morning light, first 45 minutes. Then do some deep diaphragmatic breathing. I got that from Gary Brecka. So what you do is you do 30 really intense deep breaths where you're, and you're breathing hard. It doesn't feel good, I'm going to tell you. And then when you get to the end after 30 breaths, you hold your breath. Take a nice deep breath in, hold it, and just hold it until you can't hold it any longer. So you do 3 sets of those, 90 breaths, and you hold your breath 3 times. Once you've done that, you've done the sunlight, you've done the breathing, go put your bare feet on the planet. Go touch the grass, mud, dirt, whatever. And that's huge. It's called grounding. It's called earthing. And it's so important for the balance of your body. Our ancestors walked on the grass all the time. When we were kids as baby boomers, we had our feet on the grass all the time.
Same for me, my generation.
Tennis shoes, rubber. Now you're unplugged. Not good. Not good for you.
I find myself several times throughout the day, I just randomly get up from my desk and work and go walk for 15 minutes in my grass.
That works too.
Barefooted. Yeah, all the time. I do it several times a day. And it's the difference it's made in my life has been incredible. And you're absolutely right. All of these things are great.
The last thing, I come in, I do some meditation and I do some sound therapy. And then I take a really hot shower. And then you probably see this coming. I lived up here in the Appalachian Mountains. My cabin's at 3,500 feet. I have mountain spring water coming into my home. And that temperature of that water right now is 57 degrees. And so, once I do the hot shower, this is coming. I do a 3-minute cold shower. And when it hits me in the face this morning, like every morning, when it hits me in the face, does it take my breath away? Yep. Because your body goes into fight or flight. Your body thinks it's dying, so it has to protect you. So all your veins and capillaries push all the blood inside into your brain to protect it, because it thinks the outside temperature is dropping, and you want to do it for at least 3 minutes. And the health benefits there are through the roof. We know professional athletes and Olympians, they put them in cold baths all the time. Why? Because it reduces inflammation and it helps muscles and everything to recover. Same thing. So good for you. And those 3 things are free. The breathing is free. The sunlight is free. The grounding is free. And the water, if you can get to the water. Like, I know some people have to go buy an ice bath. And I'm not going to do that. I don't need that. It's too cumbersome for me. I could just go get in the shower. My water's 57 degrees, and that's more than cold enough. So at the end of the day, and the other thing that I would tell your audience, and thanks for listening to us today, and that is, create a great story, man. You want to change your life? Change your story.
Yes, sir. Tell the audience where they can find you at, Dave, how they can book a Firewalk Productions event if they're interested in that, and all that good stuff.
Well, we're doing Operation Do No Harm now, which is a 501c3, so companies can come hire us, and then we will support 4 different categories of people. So that not only can they bring their people to the Firewalk, but they can support 4 different categories of people: vets, first responders, single moms, and kids that have been abused. So you can do it that way, or you can just hire us, like corporate America has done for years. So to get all that, plus I've got the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy that we do once a year. And that's where entrepreneurs and CEOs and trainers and coaches and business owners come. They spend 5.5 days with me in the beautiful Appalachian Mountains up here, and I teach it all to them. The Firewalk, the glass walk, the board break, the brick break, the arrow break, the rebar bend, all of it. How to talk to, Chamber of Commerce's, how to get, fire marshal's approval, insurance, hold harmless agreements, all of it. So when they leave, they can go home and facilitate in their own communities. So that goes on in October. So all of that can be found at firewalkadventures.com. It's all one word, firewalkadventures with an S.com.
Awesome, brother. Any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with, particularly for veterans interested in entrepreneurship as a path back to purpose?
Sure, man. Life is never as good as it seems. Life is never as bad as it seems. Reality's somewhere in the middle. Stay there. Don't make it out to be some shit that it's not, good or bad.
That's great.
And learn to live from the inside out, not from the outside in.
That's amazing advice, brother.
And you went off to war. You saw some nasty shit. And think about it. You go take your own life. You're gonna ruin your family's life. And that's what happened to me. It was my moment of compassion where I went, whoa, whoa, whoa. If I take my own life, who the hell do I think's gonna clean it up? My kids and my wife at that time. Can't do that. Find another better way. Come be part of Operation Do No Harm. We're doing Firewalk for veterans and first responders. Come be part of it. It's absolutely awesome. It's life-changing. It's life-saving. And then, we'll help you with your purpose. And then you can go recruit other vets or other first responders or single moms or kids that have been abused and bring them to the table. And, we'll all get happy together.
Hell yeah, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Albin. Don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe. We try and help us reach our goal of getting this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Dave, thank you so much for being here. Grateful, brother. I appreciate it. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.